My name is Kate Van Dale, and I'm the Public Information Officer with the City of Duluth. I just wanted to welcome all of you. This is our 7th weekly press conference in an effort to provide you with the public updated information and any updates that the city wants to share. Each week, we provided the opportunity for residents to submit questions to info@duluthmn.gov. These will be selected at random and asked in the press conference. If you do send us a question and it's not asked during the press conference, please know that we as staff will work very hard to get back to you as soon as we can. Joining us on the call today to provide updates are Mayor Emily Larson, City Administrator Noah Schuchman, Molly Hinderacher, who is a Planner 1 in the Planning and Economic Development Department, and Alicia Kozlowski, our Community Relations Officer. With that, I'll hand it over to Mayor Larson.
Thank you, Kate. And let's see, it's Wednesday. Sometimes I forget the day. Happy Wednesday, everybody. Duluth Mayor Emily Larson here with a few updates. I want to start by first acknowledging and thanking our community for participating in the centennial of the Clayton Jackson McGee Memorial and the lynchings of 3 innocent men. We spoke a lot about that in the weeks coming up to the date. And then, of course, we had a press event here with Governor Walz on Monday, so I won't reiterate everything, but I just want you to know how much it meant to this community that people showed up, how much it has meant to the state. And it is an indicator that we are moving forward with greater justice and with a bigger commitment to naming inequities and changing the world as we move along. So I won't say much more than that, just that I was really proud of this community for doing the best we could during a COVID time when so much else had been planned. And just to, again, share that the city did not lead those efforts, we supported them. And so I do not intend to take credit for any of that, just that we participated. So thank you for that. I have a few things to share today. First of all, we've been talking a lot about the budget. In most of these 7 weekly press conferences, I have had the opportunity to provide bad news about the budget. And so I'm just providing a little update today, a couple of pieces of information for you to kind of benchmark how things are going. First of all, on Monday, I will be providing with our finance staff an update to the Duluth City Council. The last COVID update we provided was, I think, either late March or early April, and it projected out what we expected to see. So on Monday, during the City Council meeting, so it'll be at that time when most people are able to access that meeting on WebEx, we will be updating from those projections. And actually what you will find is that many of those projections were spot on based on the indicators that our finance team has. So many different variables around our revenue sources, around our expenditures, the different decisions we are making. Our finance team has actually built out 9 different projection finance models for our budget for the remainder of the year. So I'll talk through a little bit in much greater detail on Monday, actually, different things that we're considering. But for now, I know that these are really important data points for many people in our community. And I know that we have made a slate of financial commitments to tourism entities, and they are especially watchful because many of you are waiting for allocations that I know I have said before are unlikely to be manifested in the way we had indicated, if at all. And so I am not intending to make any broad sweeping statements about, tourism tax allocations and other things today, but again, just a little bit of a forecast of where we are at. So on Monday, again, I will go into greater detail. However, we have talked about unemployment insurance and the activities that we're providing for career force. In St. Louis County, 25% of the workforce has applied for some kind of support and assistance through unemployment. That is a significant increase of what we are seeing for unemployment. Again, that's a county number, and I can talk more about where we get that number and the data and ground it in some of the research. We'll talk about that on Monday. We'll also talk more about consumer spending. It is way down. In some cases, people's incomes are stable or moving up. In many cases, of course, people's incomes are down, but consumer spending is down. And consumer spending is one of the main indicators that our finance team uses. For sales tax, for tourism tax, for all of the other revenue contributions that make up our city budget. In example, I want to share that in April, I think that's the right way to do it. So let me go back. In January, I want to give you 3 tax numbers. In January, our hotel and motel tax, which is one of our tourism taxes, was up 5%. So that was a great start. It was up 5% over the previous year. That is a really good start out of the gate to a January for our economy. And in April, it was down 87% over last year. That is the hotel motel tax. That has taken a mega hit. Now in May, we're starting to see some things come up. Anecdotally, we don't have those numbers yet. It takes us a while. There's a gap in how they're collected and how long it takes us to get that data. But we're feeling that we're on a little bit of an incline. But in April, it was down 87% for hotel and motel tax. In January, our food and beverage tax, again, another tourism tax, was up 4% in January. So that's, again, a really great start, up 4% over the previous year. In April of this year, it was down 62%. So many locals still continuing to purchase carry-out food, but down 62% over the previous year. And then the last tax number I want to share with you is our sales tax. And again, the 1% sales tax goes into our general fund to help pay for a lot of different things. And then we have the additional 0.5% sales tax for streets. In January, that sales tax was flat. It was even with the previous year. In February, it was up 7%. So that was feeling really exciting and good for us and good for our roads and all those things. In April of last year, it was down 27, or in April of last month, it was down 27%. So again, we will aggregate the information. We'll give you more budget numbers. We'll show how that fits in. But those numbers are tracking exactly with where we thought they would be in terms of financial impact, especially in terms of aggregate financial impact. I also want to say that it is going to take us a very long time to get out of this hole because these revenue numbers do not just move forward and keep going. Our property tax was down about 6%, between 4 and 6%, not 46. We had projected somewhere between 5 and 20% decrease, and so again, that's right in the margin of what we saw. Our property tax is down about $1.3 million. Now, we have been told to expect property tax. We have been told by other experts, not necessarily the county, to expect that our second round of property tax collection for this year will be even lower because people's incomes may have moved down during that time. But we are doing the best we can with the projections that we have. We are tracking market data. We are tracking consumer confidence, consumer spending, all of the things. So I will talk in much greater detail about that on Monday. Just wanted to give you a brief recap on some of the indicators that we are tracking and we are watching. And I know that it matters to you because this is a direct impact on the services that we provide. The CARES Act, federal legislation passed in March, I believe, was, again, that $667 million that was expected to be sent to cities in the state of Minnesota to help cover COVID-related costs. It is now being discussed for allocation in a special session. The Senate passed a version yesterday that may or may not move forward based on some comments the governor has made. He may want to moderate that a little bit and hold some back for a few months in case there's a later surge of COVID. It is moving forward. Other elements have not moved forward yet, whether it's workers' comp or FMLA or other things. And I will provide some of that information on Monday as well. We are doing a lot as it relates to boards and commissions. And so again, the work of the city just continues on, and we are providing you the basic services that you need to build your life around. We are living in this really tremendous democracy-rich time. People are active, they are involved. We are seeing that in our boards and commissions applications. I want to thank people who are seeing the city as a place for this energy and this participation, because we really do need you. We have been working incredibly hard over the last couple of years to make sure that we are getting new voices, new experiences, new leadership brought into our boards and commissions, so that we aren't just making sure, so that we aren't just moving people around who are kind of really valuable and have participated on that level before, but also bringing new people in. And we're seeing a tremendous increase in some applications, and so I want to thank you. But also remind you that it is a great time to see your participation as having a purpose here at the City of Duluth. And so I am asking you to consider serving on a City of Duluth board or commission or authority. And so encourage you to apply. We have an application online. You can apply for every single board and commission through that application. It describes how many openings there may be. It describes the role of that board or commission or authority. So please take a look at that. And we very, very strongly encourage you to apply. If you identify as a woman, as an Indigenous person, a person of color, as LGBTQ, Two-Spirit, as a person with a disability, and our young and emerging leaders. So please consider applying. We are always making new appointments, and we want to see you in that application process. Next week, the City Council is considering a charter change that has been supported unanimously by the Charter Commission of the City of Duluth. And it is a language change to more accurately reflect the city that we are and the city we are becoming. Specifically, it changes the name of our Chief Administrative Officer to City Administrator. We are dropping the name Chief with intention and with purpose so that we have more inclusive leadership and less language that is rooted in hurt and offensive and intentional marginalization. We are also changing our Chief Financial Officer title to Finance Director. That is not part of the charter change, but it will happen at the same time as the Chief Administrative Officer language changes. When I say that, I often get questions about police chief, fire chief. We are working on what those positions could be called because they have professional affiliations wherein the name chief has a greater connection. We are working with our chiefs on what that could and should be for the City of Duluth. So I want to thank the City Council for considering that change and ask for your strong and unanimous support to be an inclusive community and to continue to send these messages and steps that this is the city we are and the city we are becoming. And then finally, for me, I really want to share that there is a small business funding opportunity. Over the course of these 7 weeks, we've talked about the 1200 fund and the really significant investments that have happened through their actions. We have talked about DITA and the money that has gone out to support businesses through their actions. And now I really want to share with you an opportunity through LISC, which is the Local Initiative Support Corporation. LISC is a national organization that has a local office here. It's a little bit maybe like the United Way. You can go to other cities and you see United Ways there. You can go to about 30 other cities in the country and they have a LISC office, and we are one of them. So LISC puts together big piles of money, not piles of money, but they leverage and put together their money and then disseminate it down to local levels. And so we have applications that are available for funding here in the City of Duluth office for up to $2,500 in small seed grants per organization to support neighborhood level projects and COVID-19 response in the Hillside and Lincoln Park. So again, these are very specific to Hillside and Lincoln Park, and it is COVID related. Looking for people to apply for $2,500 small seed grants. The grants are funded in a partnership. The requirements, there are 2 requirements. The projects must serve residents or businesses within these 2 neighborhoods, and it must be a nonprofit and have a W-9 form available. So applications are due on July 3rd. You can find more information online at Duluth LISC, and I'm sure we'll have information on our website as well. So that's it for me for now, and I may be back later. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Larson. Next up, we have Molly to talk about the flag update. Molly.
Great. Thank you, Kate, for that introduction, and thank you to everyone for letting me speak about this project again. So just to give a little bit of context, the Duluth Flag Project started because of community engagement efforts that took place back in 2018 when we were rewriting the city's comprehensive plan. Some community members came forward with the idea to create a new city flag, and that ended up being in the plan. So for more information on this, you can go to the Imagine Duluth 2035 website under the Transformative Opportunities chapter. You'll find this idea, as well as many other ideas that came from those planning efforts. But the Duluth Flag Project included a design contest that was open to the public. a volunteer flag committee, and also some public opinion polls to help decide on a new city flag design. The final outcome was a new city flag and a design statement that went along with the design, and that was adopted by City Council back in August of 2019. Our original outreach for the project was pretty broadly focused project at one of the community listening sessions that Mayor Larson put on at Denfield High School. We pitched the project on local television and radio networks, as well as on social media sites. Our big misstep came from not slowing down the process and doing targeted outreach to underrepresented communities in Duluth. One of the main reasons why we took on this project was because we saw an opportunity to unite the community and contribute to a strong sense of civic pride. We needed to make a conscious effort to be more inclusive, and as we didn't, important voices were missed. So this is something that we would like to be remembered for future projects. But more recent events with the flag. After the adoption of it in this past August, the city received some feedback from community members that we were not fully realizing the project's goals to embed inclusivity and fairness into the fabric of city processes. We needed to expand the design statement to include all of Duluth's voices. So to respond to this feedback, the city partnered with the Duluth branch NAACP, and a lot of great work came from this partnership with the NAACP, including an assessment of the original flag design statement, further outreach efforts, and proposed changes to revise the flag design statement to be more reflective of all of Duluth's communities. So during the revision process, we leaned into the Duluth NAACP's community connections, specifically to the African heritage community, but broadly representative of our Black, Indigenous, and communities of color. This process included listening deeply to elders, leaders, and youth of color in our community and what it would look like for our city to show up, value, embrace, and be truly reflective of our diverse community members. We appreciate the call in by the Duluth NAACP and opportunity to fall forward. It is in this reciprocal relationship that was so critical to pause and to take extra time for people to feel seen and heard and valued and reflected, and for make the city and the narrative of who we are better. So with some context and the more recent events with the flag, I will transfer it over to Alicia, our Community Relations Officer, to kind of speak more on the subject.
Thanks so much, Molly. Buju and Ola Ozawa Anakwadukwe, Jagamashimo. Alicia Kozlowski, as Molly mentioned, I'm your Community Relations Officer and really happy to be here with you today. I'm proud to report back on the Duluth Flag Project and the work that we've done for community with the Duluth branch NAACP and all who helped to move us closer to really be, as Mayor Larson mentioned, the community we all need and know that we can be. What we really ended up with in this process is not just a simple revision of the flag design. That's certainly a really important piece and aspect of the puzzle, but rather the mutually reciprocal relationships that helped to set us on a trajectory to really build upon momentum and catalyze us as a city to elevate the visibility of all of our incredible and diverse community members. As an Indigenous person myself, I know invisibility and erasure is a huge barrier to our communities of color and other underrepresented peoples for justice, equity, and wellness that we deserve for our communities to thrive. And as a city, we have worked to push past our white dominant narratives of whose stories have been told and whose stories are told today due to that intentional, instructional, marginal, systematic erasure. And so this revised Duluth flag narrative is really more reflective and reflects the critical need to co-create with communities to make visible the distinct and unique people that have always existed and still exist here today. You'll see that the continued work that we have needs to continue going in our commitment as a city. We are really needing to dig in to listen as a city, and we also know that That means we also must then act to more fully and accurately illuminate and illustrate voices, stories, histories, and contemporary existence of all members in Duluth. As Mayor Larson mentioned again, specifically, we're really working and digging into centering and elevating people who identify as Black and African heritage, Latino, Native, and Indigenous, Asian, and Pacific American. We have a strong and rich immigrant and migrant community. We have LGBTQ and Two-Spirit and members of our disabilities communities. That is really vital that we expand and shift our narratives to lift up those histories and contemporary presence and strengths and power that is our existence. So some of the things that we have underway or that have been successfully completed is a big conversation out of this process with the NAACP was talking about the African Heritage Commission that was recently brought on board and how it will be a significant force for mending injury and bringing to light stories and strengths to really shape policy from cultural, economic, wellness, and health for our Black and African heritage community, and also to lift up our entire community. As a city, we've done a lot of work with park and trail namings with Gitchiodia King and our latest trail walk. Obviously, going through the process right now with policy review to make sure that we have gender affirming, culturally affirming, and people first language. We know that this is really just a launching off point and a checkpoint. There's so much more work to be done to live up to our value as a city, to be deeply rooted and reflective of our community. So the next immediate steps is to move forward with the Duluth flag adopted revised statement to the City Council next Monday, June 22nd. And we're really looking forward to co-creating and co-investing with you, our community, on a virtual or an in-person flag raising ceremony later this summer, if and when we're able to gather safely in a way that honors and celebrates and affirms all Duluthians. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Alicia. And next we have our City Administrator, Noah Schuchman. Noah, go ahead.
Thank you, Kate, and thank you to both Molly and Alicia for your work on the flag project. I have a couple of updates for you today. First, it is never too early to be thinking about snow. Last fall, the City of Duluth updated our snow emergency plan. The plan was an outcome of several months of internal discussion and outreach to other communities and organizations. Staff had identified snow emergency routes and determined the number of signs needed to adequately mark those routes. A lack of signage has been the main reason historically why snow emergencies have not been declared. And our staff identified that a total of about 2,800 signs would be needed to be purchased and installed for the new plan to work. As the mayor mentioned earlier, and as we've talked about for a few months now, the financial situation of the city is evolving. We still don't have a final estimation of how COVID-19 will affect the city's overall budget, but we do know that as a result of the COVID impact on the city's budget, we are not able to move forward with putting up the 2,800 signs required to enforce snow emergencies this year. It just would not be fair to enforce without the signage. We will revisit this plan next spring with an eye on the 2021-2022 winter. In the interim, staff will be working together to determine what this means for the upcoming snow season. We know that on-street parking continues to be an issue for our plow drivers, and we will be working on enhanced enforcement for when that happens and a communication plan to alert residents as to when they need to move cars. In the end, the alternate side parking plan works in the winter as well as people comply with it. And so we will need to look at additional enforcement to make sure that our plow drivers, in the absence of a snow emergency, are able to do their jobs as quickly and efficiently as possible. So this is not what we had planned for that, and it's not ideal, but we did want to share this as early as possible so that people can be prepared and that we can prepare for the upcoming snow season. I wanted to also briefly mention events happening in and around the city of Duluth and the ongoing impact of the pandemic. We are a city that has events throughout the summer, and that is something that is a very noticeable change this summer. City staff are working to adapt to rapidly changing standards at the state level. Guidance from the governor and from the state has changed quickly, but things are still not wide open. And so one important thing to keep in mind is that the city cannot be less restrictive than the state. We are working to adapt, and revised information on public events will be posted on the city's website. Park rentals are still happening with limitations in line with the state guidance. So thank you to you and to the public for your patience as we work as a community to protect each other and still try to have as many public events as we are able. Finally, I want to take just a moment to thank our staff who are represented by AFSCME for their partnership as we work to close the gap in the city's budget. Thank you for your hard work and your commitment to the city of Duluth and this community. On Monday, the City Council will have an opportunity to approve a memorandum of understanding with AFSCME that allows for some concessions. And I know that is not an easy conversation for any of our bargaining units to have. I appreciate the sincerity and thoughtful way that happened. And I appreciate the members for supporting that memorandum of understanding as we work to save as many jobs as possible. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Noah. And Mayor Larson, I believe that you wanted to add one final thing before we open it up for questions. So go ahead.
Okay, well, first of all, I am glad that I was muted to talk about snow. It just feels like the year just keeps on giving us these challenges. So actually, Kate, I think we covered it all. So we are ready to take questions.
Great, thank you, Mayor. I did want to start with questions that we had received from residents. This will go to Mayor Larson, but Jordan had asked us, I'm wondering if there's been any talks to reallocate funding to the Duluth Police Department to better serve the community. Social services related to education, mental health, affordable housing, etc., are more important than ever. These are things that we are currently asking police officers to address, and we are asking too much of them. The needs of our community are shifting, and the structure of the PD should evolve as a result. Mayor Larson, I will let you answer that.
I would love to take that question. Thank you, Jordan, for writing it in. I am a social worker by trade, and so how you articulated your question really makes a lot of sense to me. We have a lot of people working in positions that are doing multiple roles, and you have named that we have police officers who are doing mental health triage, who are doing chemical dependency check-ins, and I share with you actually that when we invest in things like library systems, affordable housing, our parks, there's a lot that is ensuring through those investments. So thanks for the question. Yes, we are looking at that. And I say that with a little bit of caution because we, for instance, already have a mental health social work component in partnership with St. Louis County Health and Human Services. So that may be something we expand versus start new. We are looking at different ways that we can ensure that police are doing public safety things, and maybe we can partner to do some of the other social service related things. So this is a great question. To tell you the truth, I'm not ready to answer it with a comprehensive, bullet lists because we're still just kind of getting ready to put the budget together for next year. But I appreciate this question. We'll pay close attention to it. I will be ready to answer that with greater specifics when I present the budget for next year.
Thank you, Mayor Larson. And at this point, we'd like to open it up for questions from the media. So you can either raise your hand or send me a chat to let me know that you have a question. Dan Crocker from NPR, go ahead.
Hi, Mayor Larson. Thanks, guys, again for doing this. Could you speak a little bit more to the effort to change the name of the chief administrative officer to city administrator? Could you explain just where that came from? If that was something internal that you or other staff pushed for, if that was something you heard from the community, and also could you speak a little bit more to the challenges you referred to in changing the names of police chief and fire chief?
Yeah. Thank you, Dan. Thanks for the question. So this discussion actually started internally, and it really, names and language and what we use to call things really matters. And so it was a discussion that we started to have internally. Hang on, sorry, I don't know what happened with my video there, so I just started it again. So it was a discussion we started having internally, and then also in partnership with some counselors who had come forward with their own interests in some of the language. If you look at our city charter and you look at what the language that we are grounded in, it's very masculine language. When a gender is identified, it's always him. Words like chief, it really is a document that is how we do all of our work. It really grounds us in our work, and it can better reflect the work we do now in terms of more modern language. So we are seeking to do people first language and gender neutral language, just to better reflect that the mayor is not always going to be a man, and the city administrator can be that and not the chief administrative officer. So a lot of that came internally from our staff. Alicia Kozlowski, who you heard from earlier, has been an early champion of language changing. And so then I'm struggling to remember the full context of your question, but I think it's like, what is the barriers to the police chief, fire chief, things like that? So actually, it's not so much in our staff. Our staff is really open and understands and is eager to find language that may feel more modern, more appropriate. If you look at how cities are structured, sometimes it's a city manager, sometimes it's a city administrator. It's not usually a chief administrative officer. That's just the language that we have. But there's different standards for what the role of a chief administrative officer would be. The same is true for a chief financial officer. Sometimes they're the finance director. There's just some variables that match and that give people context and understand that this is the person in charge, because that language is what it is. When you get to public safety, that language is very built into the framework of, associations and, peer-to-peer efforts and connections. And so some of it is, in cases where I guess you have a blended fire police, you would have a public safety manager, but that isn't our structure. So we have a police department and a fire department. So just finding the right language, our chiefs are interested in that and ready for that, but it is not something that we have really settled on at this point. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Mayor. Katie Galliotto from the Star Tribune. I believe you have a question. Go ahead.
Yeah, hi everyone. Thank you for all of this information. My question is kind of two related things. One, Noah, you mentioned that the decision not to purchase those snow emergency signs this year was due to financial constraints. I guess I'm wondering how much money that is going to be saving the city. And I guess secondly, to either you or Mayor Larson, I will certainly be tuning into the budget update on Monday, but I'm wondering even if you can give us any more broad kind of indication of how your projections were doing. You mentioned, I know, a few months ago that we could see a budget shortfall up to 38 million. And I'm wondering if that's a figure that's still accurate for us to be using, or if maybe even at the highest level, you could give us some indication of where things are at right now. Thank you.
Thanks, Katie. Noah, I'll have you answer that first part, and then Mayor Larson, I will bring you on next.
Yeah, thank you, Katie. Our estimate for the signs for snow emergency is around, it's just over $500,000 for 2,800 signs. That includes printing the signs, installing them. And so that is what we will save by not doing it. We were intending to use the parking fund in part because any tickets from snow emergency enforcement would go back into that fund and help to replenish it. But given the lack of parking that's been happening, paid parking that's been happening as a result of the state being closed down, we are not feeling comfortable with expending that money at this point. And so we want to be thoughtful about the health of that fund and be thoughtful also then about how we do enforcement. And so that's why we're holding off. And I'll turn it over, I think, to the mayor to talk through the budget questions a bit more.
Thank you, Noah. Mayor?
Yep, thanks, Kate, and thank you, Katie. Yeah, I went and got my laptop because we are updating these PowerPoint slides to get ready for the presentation on Monday. The benchmark that we provided was somewhere between 20 million and 38 million, and it was a variety of variables at both the low and the high end. We are still in that bracket. I'm thinking with some of the information that we'll be getting in, hopefully some clarification on what the CARES Act will pay for and reimburse us for. or for COVID expenses, kind of what are the qualifiers that put us in there, keep that to hopefully even less than 20 million, but I'm uncomfortable locking into more than that right now, Katie. I'm not thrown off by what we're seeing. It is still in that range. But I that's all I can really say today. We're still, trying to get all the data together.
Thank you, Mayor. And I believe Peter Passy from the DNT that you had a question. Go ahead.
Yeah, I do have a question, and thanks for doing these weekly press conferences. I want to just make sure that I have a full understanding of the moving away from the use of the term chief. Is that because it's indicative of a hierarchy, or is it because it's considered insensitive to people of Indigenous heritage?
Thank you, Peter. Mayor Larson.
Yeah, thank you. And Alicia, I'd like you to consider whether or not you want to jump in a little bit here. I don't want to put you on the spot too much. We hadn't prepped for that, but you are welcome to participate. So Kate, if you want to maybe give Alicia a chance. Peter, thanks for the question. It is not about a hierarchy, because the reality is we do need, people as point people and in charge, and the ones who are responsible and taking responsibility, even though, of course, that's incumbent on all of us when we're on a good, strong working team. So again, it is not about the hierarchy. It is about the term and offensive language. And it is about that, yes, it is language that is offensive to people who are Indigenous, and actually offensive to a lot of people, especially when there is other language available. So that is the other thing. There are lots of language opportunities that still identify this person as the point person, this person as the one who will bear and take and the responsibility at the end of the day for decision making, and to do that in a way that the language is more inclusive, more reflective, more accurate, and more modern.
Thank you, Mayor. And Alicia, I have got you. So if you wanted to answer that, you are unmuted.
Yes, thank you for the opportunity to chime in here. Oftentimes the word chief is used as, I would say, a racial epithet, and it turns into a microaggression. And so, as Mayor Larson mentioned, chief definitely refers to Native and tribal peoples, and that's also tribal peoples reflective of African heritage, Native American, and so much more. And so I think that there are other titles that we have the opportunity to use and to steer away from language that may put people down based off of their race or culture. And part of doing this now is also that being proactive rather than being reactive, I think, is a really critical piece of it, that we have the opportunity to do better and be better before we're asked.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alicia. Peter, I hope that answered your question. I'm not sure if there are other questions from the media, so I'm just going to take a break and ask another question from a resident. So the question is from Felicia. Felicia, thanks for your question. I'd like to know what Lincoln Park and the city of Duluth as a whole are doing currently to curb or combat fireworks usage, and how we can help people to knock it off. Mayor Larson, are you
I
going
would
to
love
take
this one. I would love this one. Thank you, Kate. Felicia, thank you for the question. I'm sorry I laughed hillside, and I feel you. It is an evening occurrence. So here's a couple things. What we actually need to do is for neighbors to take responsibility and find the courage to talk to their own neighbor, because here's what happened. Please call 911. You're welcome to do that. What's happening is that our police are getting, 10 to 12 calls a night, thinking it's a shot fired, it's a firework. They show up, the person who set off the firework is gone, they don't know where it came from. It's not actually enforceable from that vantage. And so what we really need are for people to really call their neighbor out and to tell them to knock it off. And I can assure you that we have been getting a lot of calls about this. It is disturbing to people who aren't prepared, aren't ready for it, are trying to sleep, babies who are trying to sleep. I mean, all of it. I understand that our fireworks have been canceled. I understand that we all find our own fun and our own ways to have fun. We live in a city. We choose to live in a city because we want a sense of community, and it is incumbent upon us to be good stewards of community. So anyone in this community who has a dog is deeply troubled by fireworks. People who have PTSD really do hear that as a shot fired, and we have more and more veterans living in our community. So there's a variety of reasons why we want to do that differently. It is really hard for 911 to be an enforcement tool, because by the time someone arrives, and it could be just even 2 to 5 minutes later, that person has left and gone into their house, and we don't know what house it was. So it's really, all I can say is please, 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 this is where I think, it's a different discussion and a different bullet point, but this is where actually I think the fact that we don't know our neighbors as well as we did a generation ago starts showing in this behavior. You don't light off fireworks and trouble your neighbors if you know them and love them. And people used to kind of hold each other in line and accountable. So I can't say enough about how important that is. We'll continue to do our part, but the best thing that you can do is either get real address was, or work with your neighbors to help bring that neighbor in line. But I feel you every night in my Hillside neighborhood.
Thank you, Mayor Larson. Wondering if there are any other questions from the media at this time. Peter, go ahead.
Yeah, I had one other question. Mayor Larson, you talked about federal funds, COVID relief funds that were earmarked for local government. I think Senator Rarick has a bill that had talked about finally releasing some of that money and divvying it up. I think they had like $24.3 million would be St. Louis County's share of that. Do you have any idea how much of that 24.3 might be brought to bear in terms of helping the city with its finances?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Peter. So a Senate version did pass yesterday, and it was 667 million was the initial number for local units of government. I shouldn't just say municipalities, because like you point out, it is also for counties in St. Louis County. They did actually 800 and some million dollars. And so 2 things. One is that number 800 may be more than the governor has an interest in. I can't speak to more than that. I don't really know, so that number may change. But my understanding, again, is that the projection was that St. Louis County would benefit with $24 million. My understanding is that goes to St. Louis County, and that the city would receive $6.5 million. Now, we have to make the case for that. So I need to be really clear. That isn't just money that's going to be put over in a budget hole, because it is very clear in the enabling legislative language on the federal level that it is not intended for that. It is intended for COVID costs. And so again, we'll provide an update on that on Monday, what our costs have been, what we think could be covered. And it will be a bit of art to get our number as close as we can to that 6.5, because it is not a cut and dried kind of, we can just use that to fill it. It has to have been a COVID-related expense. So again, there is the potential for there to be additional CARES Act funding or an additional act on the federal level that could have greater flexibility for local units of government. We are hoping for that. We are working on that. We are supporting that. That still has not taken place on the federal level. And the same would be true that they're not giving money to the states to fill their budget gaps and other things. So it's going to be tricky. It's not a slam dunk in terms of being eligible to leverage all of that money and how much it'll be in the end, but those are the ballparks that I know for now.
Thank you, Mayor. Dan Crocker, did you have another question, or it's okay if your hand's just raised? I'm guessing there's no other questions. Okay, well, seeing none, I also just wanted to point out one thing. Many of you have been asking about Asl interpretation. Thank you for that. We've been trying with technology to try to figure out how best to do that. Last week, after the press conference, we posted a separate video that did have that interpretation. You'll see this again today. So this original video will have live captioning. After the video, we'll post a second video on our Facebook page that will have the Asl interpretation. Also wanted to point out that tomorrow at 2 o'clock, the city is going to be having a swearing in ceremony for Counselor Timonik, and we will have an Asl interpreter there. So if you're watching live on Facebook, we hope that that's something that you tune in to watch. We're excited to welcome her into the council, and so just wanted to provide you with an update on making sure that everyone has access to these communication briefings, and that we're trying our best to make sure that that happens. With that said,